I don't want to sound like a scold or preachy, or somebody who's holier than thou, or like a Boy Scout, because I'm not, by any stretch. But it has been one of the more dispiriting things working on this project, where a lot of the time in the past, I've written about crime a fair amount, and it's just kind of baked in that you're writing about a bad person doing a bad thing, and they kind of know they're bad usually, and there's a sort of moral clarity there. What was so fascinating to me about this story is that I think the Sacklers are kind of are bad actors. I think they did really bad things. And they're the focus of the story. But then around them are all of these facilitators. And it's former prosecutors who go and work as private defense attorneys for the family or for the company. It's former DEA officials who go and work as lobbyists for the industry. It's former FDA officials who go and work at the company. It's, folks at McKinsey. It's this whole kind of amazing entrenched machine of people who I think in many instances don't think of themselves as the bad guys. And in some cases, society doesn't think of them as the bad guys, right? One of the characters in my book is Mary Jo White, this, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, she was Obama's head of the SEC. She's a hero to lawyers all over the place, a woman who kind of broke the glass ceiling. And she's represented Purdue and the Sacklers for years and is totally a handmaiden to them. So it's a thing that I've kind of wrestled with personally. I'm a lawyer by training, and I know that there is a sort of, it's very fundamental to the ethos of the profession that, the lawyer isn't the client, and that we shouldn't necessarily kind of transpose the moral stink of the client onto the lawyer. But it's hard for me when you tell the Lyndon Barber story. There's 100 people like that in the book, who play that kind of role, and again and again and again, you get these people who are supposed to be the cops. Basically, they're supposed to be law and order, and they get co-opted by the money, and it's really discouraging.
And sometimes I don't get it because the money isn't even that much. I mean, when you look at Chris Dodd and Marsha Blackburn and Tom Marino and Orrin Hatch, I mean, it's just hard for me to look at these people and think of them as reasonable or respectable, truthfully. When I look at their involvement in the bills that they sponsored and the positions that they took in all of this. And when you look at the dollars that they received from
they're bought so cheaply.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, Patrick. I expected that it would have taken tens of millions to have bought those people. They were bought for hundreds of thousands of dollars. U.S. senators for sale for hundreds of thousands of dollars? I don't understand it.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think it's so I think the thing is, some of it is the money, donations and what have you. But I think there's this other thing that is more about the revolving door and the kind of this insidious thing where it's the lobbyists, and the lobbyists are often people they know, right? And it's a kind of, you see this with the way in which Purdue and the Sacklers would use lawyers. Like Mary Jo White is a good example, or they hired Rudy Giuliani for years, was kind of their hatchet man. And it's like, if you were a federal prosecutor and you're investigating me, the real move is not to sort of fight it out with you on the merits in court the way most people would. It's for me to go to your boss, but not for me personally to go to your boss, for me to find somebody who your boss knows and respects. And that's the person I buy off, and I send them to go and kind of make the overture. And so I think when you look at these people, it's not just that it's the sort of soft corruption thing where some of it is it's not like campaign contributions. It's that it's that scene in The Godfather where the guy's supposed to testify in court, and they get the old guy from Sicily to come and just sit in the courtroom, and it happens to be his uncle or whatever, and he sees the guy in the courtroom, and he suddenly sort of loses all his moral conviction and decides he's not going to testify. It's sort of that. It's like being really smart and strategic about who's the right messenger. Who would we send to make the case to Chris Dodd, about why he shouldn't come after us, or why he should, help us in this or that. And man, they're really good, really, really good at that.
And it's interesting at how, if I want to use the word, you might not use the word, but if I want to use the word corruption, how bipartisan the corruption was.
Totally.
What was the bill, HR 4709? This is the sleeper bill, right? It's like this 3-page nothing burger that basically opened the pipelines to move these drugs and put the DAA's hands behind its back. I mean, again, it's a little detail, but my God, it's amazing how unopposed that bill went.
Yeah, but I mean, this is absolutely, but some of that I think is the fact that nobody's really reading the bill. The bill was carefully designed to look like it was sort of doing the opposite of what it was doing, right? It's like, we're gonna fight the opioid crisis. Obama signed it, and who knows how closely he looked at it. I think that there's enough business that goes on in Washington, and I think particularly when it comes to lawmaking, you have these members of the House and senators they spend all their time raising money. If you can make what you're doing look like business as usual, you can pull it off. It's super dispiriting. But again, I mean, listen. The opioid painkiller industry spends, I think the statistic is like 7 or 8 times what the gun lobby spends on lobbying in Washington, right? So just imagine the kind of impact that you can have on the legislative picture. And then you see this with a company like Purdue. You have this long period of time where all these states are trying to respond at a state level to the opioid crisis, and they're trying to introduce new legislation to shut down pill mills or go after bad docs and what have you. And you have these legislative initiatives at a state level that get set up, and Purdue finds the right state lobbyists to go to the state capitol and help neuter those bills as best they can. And we're very successful at doing that. I mean, it is when you have a drug that's generated $35 billion in revenue, the amount of influence you can buy is just awesome.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Finally, I take conflicts of interest very seriously. For all of my disclosures and the companies I invest in or advise, please visit peteratiamd.com/about, where I keep an up-to-date and active list of such companies.